Any of you remember the Logitech Harmony remote? I'm sure you do. It was super popular and a big part in home theater setups. They released tons of models over the years. These were universal remotes, but on a completely different level. They pretty much all had screens on them and were programmable by computers. We'll get into that more later. Anyway, we didn't need one, so I never got to mess around with it. And guess what? It's actually on eBay for not too bad of a price. So, of course, I got one. The one I got is the Harmony 880. It had two new features compared to the other remotes. It was the first of the Harmonies to have a color screen, which we can see the product page talking about. It looks like you can change the background and the icons, which is actually really cool. But we'll see how well that works later on. The other standout feature is the rechargeable battery, which this is the first one to have that. The main pitch for all remotes was that it can help you control complicated HDTV and PVR systems, and that convoluted tasks like changing aspect ratios for movies and TV can be simplified. Logitech also brags about their 8 industrial design awards in 2 years, and that it can control and remember the state of 15 devices at once. That's actually kind of impressive. You can see why this was a genuinely cool product though. If you had a TV, receiver, cable box, VCR, and game console or two, keeping track of that many remotes would be a major pain. Being able to set up one remote that had an easy to use and flexible interface is a really good idea. Alright, so let's check out that remote. I got this off of eBay and it didn't cost too much. After fishing it out of the packing peanuts and unwrapping it, you can see it's already powered on. I'm going to clean this and we can set it up. The design of this is pretty nice. It has an ergonomic shape with a pretty big screen on it. The screen itself is 128 by 160, which isn't a lot of pixels to work with, but it does a job. There are buttons that correspond to the screen on either side, then all the other controls like volume, channel, navigation, you name it. When you put the remote on the dock, it just starts charging and shows a slideshow, and when you lift it up, the backlight turns on and it plays a little chime. Now it's time to set it up. I don't want to bore you too much with all the setup, so I'll try and go fast. The application install was pretty standard, and after setting up an account, which still works today by the way, it was ready for the remote. This was just plug and play. The remote has a USB port on top, and the application just picks it up. Now it's ready for my devices. I think the first one I'm going to do is my oldest TV, the Admiral one that I featured in another video. I went in and it just had this basic layout. The list to show the manufacturers took forever to load, by the way, so if you're doing this and it doesn't work, just be patient. I selected the manufacturer and the model, and it seemed to know what TV I had. It asked me to confirm the activity, which we'll worry about that later. And then it said to connect the remote. After pushing the update, it was time to test it out. I didn't know what to expect. On the screen of the remote, it was showing Remote Assistant, which is there to help if the remote is sending out wrong infrared codes. This actually helped me a few times, and it worked pretty well. For now, I just pressed the OK button and clicked on Devices. It showed the TV right here, and when you click on it, it maps all the buttons on the remote to that specific device. And to my surprise, when I pressed the power toggle, it actually worked. Some of the buttons worked, like the channel buttons and the volume down, but not volume up. I thought maybe it didn't map it correctly, but no, some of these buttons just need to be pressed down pretty hard for it to work. I'm going to assume this is just an issue with my remote though. I wanted to add some extra functions, so I went back to the software. On the Devices tab, if you click the Learn IR button, you can see all the infrared commands for that device. At the bottom, you can even add custom ones. The first custom one I added was the caption toggle. It tells me to point my original remote at the bottom of the Harmony, where there's a tiny little infrared window. And when you press that original button, the software says key detected, and the remote remembers that button. I also added the toggle between caption track 1 and 2, which was the same procedure. Point the original remote at the bottom and press the button. While I was in the software, I poked around a little more. You can rename devices. You can also set up the slideshow in the background. The theme is the option that got my attention. There are 4 to choose from, and the uppercase one is pristine. Anyway, to push the changes to the remote, press Update Remote, and that's about it. Now when I grab the remote and point it at the TV, the caption/teletext button works, along with selecting the caption track. Now it's just time to add a bunch of devices. I added my Samsung TV, which just got the mapping right. You can see me scrolling through the channel list, and I even found a menu that I didn't know existed. Added my Win TV capture card, which I also made a video on, so I could control my computer. It shows up in the software under the PVR category, and to my surprise, this also worked. If I press the go button on the remote, you can see it actually launches the software. I can use the numbers to tune to a different channel. This won't actually show anything on the software because the antenna isn't set up right. I can use the channel buttons to change the channel, set the aspect ratio, toggle captions, and more. It's kind of cool that it worked. The power button even closes the software. Even my RGB lights worked, and you can use the number pad to change the colors. Alright, one more thing is the activities. You can see that I made an entire list of things to do with the press of a button. It turns on the TV, waits 5 seconds, sets the TV input to TV, waits, changes the channel to 14, waits, then toggles captions and sets the light strip to a different color. All this in one button. Also, ignore the duplicate events here, I just forgot to remove them. Now we can watch this happen in real time. The lights change color while the TV is turning on. After it turns on, then it switches the input to TV, and after a second, it'll actually start manually punching in the numbers for channel 14. I know it was already on channel 14, so I guess this step wasn't necessary. And then it turns on captions. Very cool. Also, I noticed I don't really have to point the remote at what I'm controlling for it to work. The IR blasters on here must be much more powerful than what they put in remotes today. Look at this. I can be pointing the remote at the floor in the opposite direction of my TV, and it still turns on. So, that's about it for this video. Oh, and I just launched my Patreon. If you want to help support the channel and get some extra perks like behind the scenes and early access, I would really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe even learned something. Thanks for watching.